Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk about The Man Who Laughs by Victor Hugo. Now, I also want to give some reading tips because this wasn't an easy book to read. And of course, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts. I needed some time to figure out my feelings about this book. I have finished it like a month ago on my trip to New Zealand. And yeah, I needed this time to really process everything. And now I feel like I really know how to feel about this book. Now, let me first tell you what this story is about. We follow a young Gwynplaine, and he is a child when he finds a baby girl in a snowstorm. And he saves her that night and knocks on a door of an older man who both takes these children inside the house. Because this baby girl was in a snowstorm for so long, she got blind. Gwynplaine is actually a mutilated boy, and he has a grin carved onto his face because he was abducted by a group of people who mutilated children to turn them into attractions. And so Gwynplaine and this baby girl, Dia, they grow up together and they fall in love. This premise, my God, it sounds so good. I was super excited to get into this story, and boy, did it turn out great. I enjoyed it a lot. But I want to talk about certain things and certain difficulties that I had while reading this book. First of all, I want to talk about the names in this book. So Gwynplaine and Dea grow up with this older man, a philosopher and kind of a grumpy man, and he is called Ursus. Now, in Latin, Ursus means bear. And this man has an animal sidekick, which is amazing, and he is a wolf. And he is called Homo, which means man in Latin. So the wolf is called man, and the man is called bear. Now, I haven't figured out what it really means, but I kind of feel like he was trying to give a message to the reader about something. If you know what it is, please let me know, because I am dying to know the meaning of this. I must say that the thing that impressed me most were the characters. Hugo does an amazing job at creating and bringing to life characters. And the most difficult thing about Hugo, about reading his works, is he loved to divert from the storyline. Now, this book is around 600 pages. What if I told you that 80% felt like straying from the storyline? It was really a challenge to get through. It is such a shame because the storyline was so intriguing and I constantly wanted to read on. I am used to reading Hugo and I know that he likes to digress. But this was a whole different level. I got to this point where I started skimming and I have a completely sane explanation for doing this, because I do not like to skim parts of a book. I like the whole experience, but hear me out. When he diverts in Notre Dame or in Les Misérables, I understand the digressions. I understand why they are there, and I can kind of relate to the issues that he's presenting. But the problem that I had with this one in particular is that I didn't understand. Like, if I would have read all of the digressions that he made, I wouldn't be any smarter, and I didn't understand what he was talking about. And part of the issue comes from the fact that we live in these modern times, and Hugo was criticizing the 17th century England and France, and I felt like I needed to read some history books first in order to understand what the hell he was talking about. There are many names thrown at us, the reader, and I didn't even find the internet useful. Like, I just couldn't understand exactly what it was about. And it, of course, made me feel kind of stupid for not understanding, but on the other hand, it is quite normal, I think, to not connect with the characters that he's criticizing from that time period that he was writing about. Now, every time he diverted from the story, I gave it a orange tab, and as you can see, I have a lot of tabs sticking from this book, which leads me to a very important reading tip. If you're about to tackle this book, do not give up because of the digressions of Hugo. Instead, if you feel like you won't be capable of finishing the book, skip the chapters and enjoy the main storyline of Gwynplaine and Dea and Homo and Ursus. Because I promise you that this storyline is so good. It is so good, and you cannot miss out on this beautiful, tragic story just because you cannot get through the digressions. So please do not give up on this book if you're having a difficult time with it. The fact that Dea is blind and Gwynplaine is mutilated and a monster, this is really central to the story. He uses their love to explore loyalty and how love can transform lives. Now, I have read quite some works by Hugo, and one thing that really stands out is that he loved to write about the outcasts, about mutilation, about monsters. Just like in Notre Dame, there are a lot of Latin phrases. Don't let them scare you. There isn't any translation. There wasn't any translation in my book, but I managed to get through it without knowing what they meant. Hugo also likes to educate his reader. For example, there's a scene where we travel through time, and Hugo explains how people have always created monsters and how bad things have been done to people for the pleasure or the amusement of other people. And there's this quote that I really loved and that really made me think, which goes as follows. Man has always wished to add something to God's work. Man retouches creation, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Alright, so now I would like to go over the storyline, which is going to be full of spoilers, okay? So if you haven't read the book and if you do not want to know the storyline, then do come back to this video later after you have read the book because I do not want to ruin your experience. Okay, so let's go over the main storyline and the main story points, okay? If you see me looking down, it's just because I'm looking at my notes. Ursus encourages the love between Dea and Gwynplaine, which I absolutely loved. Like, he is such a grumpy character, and especially in the beginning of the story, it seems like he's like more of a villain than of someone who is willing to help this young couple. But you know, it eventually gets clear that Ursus is more complex and that he really is rooting for the relationship between Dea and Gwynplaine. And it is especially Gwynplaine who is struggling with his feelings because he feels that he is way too ugly to be with a woman so beautiful as Dea, and you know, she cannot see him anyway, and she always says, you know, it's okay, but he is kind of stubborn and he longs to be with her, but he cannot be because of the conflict in his heart and his conscience. Now, one day Gwynplaine gets taken away and he is convinced that they will kill him because they bring him to this dungeon, but in fact they tell him that he is Lord Firmin Clancharlie. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. And he is in fact a baron, a marquis, and a peer of England, which comes as a real shock to Gwynplaine. And then the politics really start, and I didn't understand a thing. Gwynplaine must leave his current life and trade it for a life of luxury. It is there that he meets another woman called Duchess Josiana, and this was a really strange part in the book. Like I really did not like it much. What I found strange most was that this Josiana was attracted to Gwynplaine just because he's a monster, just because he is so ugly and she is so beautiful, and the contrast really attracted her in some way. And there's this really weird scene between them where they almost have intercourse with each other. It really surprised me because it kind of got quite in depth, and there is a lot of sexual tension in this book, it really surprised me because it's such an old book, and in this time period, it must have been quite shocking. Okay, so that part really, I found it a bit weird. So if you have read the book, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this scene were. All right, now Gwynplaine is starting to accept his new life, but at a certain point, he starts to miss Dea, and he starts to realize how wrong he was in trying to build a relationship with another woman. But in the meantime, they have told Ursus and Dea that Gwynplaine is dead and that they must leave the country, and so they go on their way. But Gwynplaine, in time, realizes that this isn't the life he wants. He wants to go back to his old life, and so he returns home. Final scene: he gets home. He's there just in time. And he takes Dea into his arms. But Dea, this whole time, she knew that Gwynplaine would never return, and she was dying inside, and she wanted to die. And so he reaches her and he grabs her, and she dies in his arms. And if I remember correctly, she says to him, "Please don't stay away for too long, like join me, because I cannot miss you." And so he goes outside on the deck of the ship, because they were on a ship, and he throws himself into the sea. The end. I must say that Hugo really knows how to create a tragic ending. I love his endings. The child felt the coldness of man more terribly than the coldness of night. The coldness of man is intentional. He felt a tightening on his sinking heart, which he had not known on the open plains. Second one. You are masked forever by your own flesh. What can be more ingenious? The paradise of the rich is made out of the hell of the poor. God is blind. The day that he created the world, he did not see the devil manage to creep into it. Angels are necessary. Is it possible that demons are also essential? If you enjoyed this video, then you might be interested in watching my other Victor Hugo reviews on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and I hope to see you next week.